now that we've finally finished the whole process of dealing with our data, we've gone through the process of training and evaluating our models, and finally, it is time to deploy our model to production. So we've made it to the end step where we have a model that we believe is good enough to be used on production data, and the team has agreed on it. It's been thoroughly tested, and we are good to go. So now we have to decide what method do we want to use to get our model to production. So how are we actually going to deploy this? There are a few different methods that you'll see used quite a bit throughout machine learning projects. So the one of the common ways is just via a package that you make in Python and you serve it through an API. So there might be a completely separate team that you work with. Maybe there's some kind of backend team that's responsible for handling all of the endpoints for a particular project, and all you have to do is give them the model as a pip package or in some other format that their API can interface with, and basically take new data and use this model to get the prediction or the classification for this real-time data. And that was kind of one of the other things you'll see APIs used for a lot with model deployment. It's usually for more real-time data. So this is where an individual user might be interacting with your model. So maybe something, I don't actually know how ChatGPT is deployed, but maybe it's a Python package, or it can be, and is served over an API. And then we have batch predictions. This is a really commonly used method, especially when you're working with larger data, because it gives you a set of new data to process all at the same time. So with batch predictions, you're not going to get an immediate response from your model. The model will be stored somewhere. Maybe it's a cron job that gets run every day or every week. Maybe it's a process that gets triggered once a certain amount of data has been added. There's a lot of different ways to trigger batch predictions, but these typically, again, maybe involve bigger data like images or videos, or maybe it involves a lot of data that needs to be processed. So if you're doing millions of transactions a day, you might need to wait a full day or a full week to have a sufficient amount of clean data to work with to use your batch prediction. And then a fun one is when you get to embed your model on an IoT or mobile device. And this comes up a lot in manufacturing. So when you have different parts that are coming down an assembly line, or they're on a conveyor belt or some kind of system like that, you might need to do some really fast checks to see if there's any defects in any of the equipment that's being produced by this assembly line. So in order to do that, you might have a little microcontroller with a camera on it that has your model embedded on it. And as these parts come down the assembly line, you snap a quick picture, send it through the model, and it decides whether that part goes through the assembly line or if it gets flagged as a defective part and it's something that someone actually has to take a look at. So these are some of the ways you'll see machine learning models get deployed to production. And then just to reiterate, batch predictions are really useful when you want to get predictions for a data set all at once. So sometimes it's not efficient or it doesn't make sense to do real-time predictions. So a lot of what you'll see will be batch predictions, and they'll probably update some database somewhere else. Maybe it'll go back to your data source somewhere, one of them anyways, and you'll be able to get those predictions all at once instead of one at a time, and possibly causing some issues with your model's performance. And again, embedding models in devices is actually pretty cool, but it's really useful when you're in more of a real world environment like manufacturing, or maybe even in agriculture where you have a robot that's going through fields and taking pictures of plants to see if anything has a particular disease or if the crops are ready to be harvested. So there's a lot of different scenarios for embedding machine learning models on IoT devices these days. And again, coming back to the main way that you'll see a lot of models being deployed to production, it's gonna be through an API. And this usually is because the project will be focused on something customer related and they want the users to be able to interact with that model directly. And the API is typically built by a separate team, but every now and then the machine learning team might have to manage their own API as a separate project in a separate repo, and it's hosted on a separate platform. But a lot of times you'll have an API that's built and maintained by another team. You just are responsible for getting them an updated version of the model when it needs to be updated. So let's take a quick look at how you might actually deploy a model. So I'm going to switch back over to VS Code, and we're in our project. So if I come to the new project directory, I'm going to open this api.py. So this is pretty much just a skeleton file of the steps you would take to deploy a model to production. So the first thing you would need to do is actually import your model. So that might be, again, a package that you just have installed in your virtual environment. It might be a model you've decided to use from like sklearn. Maybe you're working with images and you just want to use an already built VGG model. So you have options when you're ready to import your model, but typically it'll be bundled up as some kind of pip package. And in this case, let's say you're a machine learning engineer and you don't have a team of developers behind you, so you're responsible for creating the endpoint and maintaining it as well. In that case, you might want to choose a lightweight framework for your API like Flask. Flask is a really easy way to get an endpoint set up quickly and to have it be maintainable over the long term. So you would also add Flask into your project like we're doing here, and maybe you want to serve this on a particular route. So this could be, I don't know, let's just call it model. And we'll change this to be model call, or maybe data prediction. That makes sense. So that's the function that's going to be called when we hit this slash model route. And then we'll get in some data from the request. We'll pass that data to the model, and then we'll pass that prediction back to the user in the form of probably some kind of HTML. So in order to run this app, we'll go ahead and run flask --app, and we have the name of our project and run. And then when I switch over here, actually at the root, there's nothing there. But when I go to this dash model endpoint, you can see that we have this output for where our prediction would be. So this is one of the ways you can get your model to production. And we talked about batch prediction and embedding your model in IoT devices as other methods to get your model to production.